Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Resilient Events Podcast, aka Rizpod. If you don't know how to spell it, it's RIZPOD.live. And what can you get on Rizpod.live?
All this stuff. Summaries. Okay. If you're not going to make it through the episode and you're like, that was interesting, I need the summary, go there. Yeah, you'll get this stuff.
Don't worry. We won't keep you long, though, so hopefully you can make it through this episode. We are talking about me today. Well, not just me, but how to pick the best producer. 5 simple ways to pick the best producer.
How to pick Marisa. How to pick the best producer.
Hey, I will tell you that when I'm talking to people and talking with them through particular events, I am not always the best fit. And most of the time it's because they don't know what they want and they don't pay for strategy. So we'll get into that. So yeah, I don't know what you meant by this intro.
Oh yeah, well, just like 5 simple steps, right? So step 1 is their first name Marisa, and step 2 is their last name Cali. If not, just forget the other steps, right?
Okay, thank you.
Actually, though, we have real steps to help pick real people.
Yeah. Okay. Well, like I said, I'm not always the best one because it just depends on where you're at with your goals and who's on your team. Sometimes I work with big teams. Sometimes I work with no teams. So it does really just depend. But that's comes from 15, 20 years of experience in digital marketing. So I can kind of weed those people out. Or tell them to work with someone else. I don't know. Thank you for hyping me up, John.
Do you have some like enemies that you send bad clients to?
No.
I know the perfect person for you.
No. I wouldn't. I think most of my relationships, even if they're peer-to-peer, are good. I don't really have relationship enemies.
You don't have enemies?
So yeah.
Oh, okay.
I probably have enemies. I just don't know about them because I don't engage with them. So yeah. Well, let's get into it.
Yeah. Well, so step 1, 5 simple steps is, always goes back to intention setting. Step 1, figure out what you want.
Yes.
Right. And like like you were just mentioning is that person, are you looking for somebody that's going to give you perspective on the overall thing and kind of help you plan something out? Or you just need somebody to work the controls? You want a guide or do you want a grunt?
And I've done both. And I love doing both. Yeah, I just recently worked on a project where it was very straightforward. I was a back end producer, basically like a room host, and for a production company that was putting on a virtual event. There was like 6 of us on the team, but it was simple. We knew what my roles were. I jumped in maybe like a half day before to kind of give myself an overview, and then we executed a really fun day event for educators. But those people, if you're listening, those people are more like event managers, event producer, production companies, right? And then they like hire their staff. But if you're more of like, you haven't dived into events, then you're going to probably need like a jack of all trades, someone who's going to start you from the beginning to do strategy, what type of event tech to work with, who's working with your speakers, how you're doing it, marketing, promotion, execution, stuff like that. So
yeah, makes sense. And so notice we didn't put in there that you're supposed to figure out your event tech first. Probably want to figure out whether you're going to have a planner or whether you other planner. You don't want to just go tech first in any case.
Yeah.
Go figure out your strategy, figure out what you want first, and then that's like further down the line.
Yeah, I think, when you're talking about planning events, and this is something that I had a conversation with earlier this week with someone, the question was, how many people attend the events you produce? And I couldn't give like a really clear answer because it's not like one event that I'm producing and it's the same strategy each time. And I kind of threw it back on them, like, how much are you going to invest in promotion? Are you doing the promotion? Are you outsourcing the marketing? How much lead time? And, we're going to talk further, but like, it's those types of questions that need to be answered or figured out in the initial calls, because I think they like the idea of virtual events, but I'm not going to be a promoter. I might be a project manager to actually set it up, but like a promoter is a different thing, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's a good wrap. Number one, figure out what you want. Number two, I think the best way to move next is to find references, not producers. Because if you just start Googling event producer, you're going to come up with an endless list.
yes.
And it's just not going to be the best way to start. And so what I would do is just think like back in your like what inspired you to do this if you're doing like a live stream or virtual event. What inspired you to do it? Was it a certain event? Who was that producer? Can you talk to the owner of that event and get a referral, for example?
Right. Um, talk to your network, because most of the time the people that are especially working for themselves, they've talked to someone already, a producer or some type of person, not if they're doing it, but they kind of know like the language. Hey, like I want to do this, do you know anyone? I mean, just like every other referral in business, talk to people about maybe what your vision is, especially if it's so you're not like wasting strategy money that
Yeah.
you could be talking to a producer, or you talk to someone and you pay someone for their consultation and maybe it doesn't work out, but you paid someone to get some knowledge and some direction, right? So references.
Fair. Yeah. Other people you could look for, like you're part of any associations. Posting on social might be a little bit risky. Maybe
Mhm.
get too much incoming. Did you know that Gmail tracks what you're sending? So if you're like emailing people about this, they'll just you email somebody, where do I find a live stream producer? You'll get an ad for a live stream producer like the next
Mm.
minute. It's gotta be.
Yeah, I don't doubt that. I've I've seen other things like event tech, like in my ads and stuff like that, because I'm Googling or having a conversation about it. So we're all being tracked.
Yeah,
That's okay.
gotta keep that stuff secret. It'll just show up on Facebook.
Yeah.
Zuckerberg's got you again. But
And
yes,
a really good tip is like if you see something that you like or you've attended something that you like, talk to the people that plan it. Sometimes they love talking. No one comes to them to talk about like how they planned it, right? So or
yeah,
like get some insight. So
yeah, I'd say that'd be the absolute best source. So that's step two: find references, not producers.
mhm.
Step number three is interview the referrers, not
Yeah,
the referees.
yeah.
Um, and so honestly, like offer to buy them a coffee if they're local.
Mhm.
Like, and if you're trying to get a phone call, don't say I want to talk to you, pick your brain for a half hour on Zoom. Nobody wants their brain picked, really,
Yes.
right? But like 10 or
Only if
15,
they pay the invoice.
yeah,
The brain
exactly.
pay the invoice
Yeah.
first.
10 or 15-minute phone call though, and just write out some basic questions for like what you might want to ask those
Mhm.
referrers. You got to like ask them these questions. Like I think one of the most important questions is like what at every event something goes wrong, right?
Mhm.
And so
Oh, okay.
how did they handle it when something went wrong? This person you're referring, like what was were they handling it when that went
What
wrong?
was your experience like with?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I got you.
And
Yeah.
then also, yeah, like what did they deliver? Did they deliver on quote? Like were they like generally trustworthy? Were they a pleasure to work with? I think like honestly being a pleasure to work with is like the number one most important thing.
Yeah.
Having the technical skills is one thing, but having the people skills is like makes
Yeah.
it possible when times get tough, and everybody in events know times get tough during basically every event.
My question would be what like I don't even think I would bring up price with. I mean, maybe I guess it depends on your relationship with this referrer. But if you're trying to get to an end goal and you think about it as an investment in your business, like to me, the price doesn't matter sometimes, and maybe it's a project I have to do later on or something like that. But like, what's more important to you? The interaction, the communication that you're having with this potential producer and their experience, or how much does it cost? Because we all know you get what you pay for, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, one thing I'd always like to know is like, did they were they about correct with their quoted price versus their like build price? right?
Oh.
Like, are they good at kind of forecasting and staying within it?
Yeah, I think if that's a big question, some producers will charge like a day rate, and it is what it is, right? Like there's no like, oh, I'm going to charge more after. And that's really on the producer, the expert, to accurately ask those questions, right? So, like, honestly, like, I don't think I've ever adjusted my prices after I've began a project. I just take it as a loss if I'm doing way too much more than what I originally envisioned or quoted them.
Got it. That might actually be helpful for people right now. Then I know it's like not part of our 5-step plan
Yeah.
here. But like how would you normally bill people? Like I imagine there's not like there's the day, but there's also all the other crap that
Mhm.
goes like before
Mhm.
the day,
Mhm.
after the day's set up, getting tech checks and stuff like that. Like what is that? I'm not asking for like amounts, but like what does that kind of billing structure normally look like for a producer?
Yeah, I've done 3 different ways: hourly, day rate, and hourly plus day rate. So when it becomes like a project where like the tasks are not defined and like the team is kind of like all over the place, I kind of do a set base amount what I base on the questions I ask, right? So like,
Right.
okay, this is not going to be too much work, or maybe it's not. And there is some buffer built in that for potential tasks that I didn't think that I would have to do. And that's based on my expertise, right? Like I
Yeah.
know that this is going to take X amount. But there have been events where I've done where we do hourly plus day rate, and that is a lot more stressful in the while you're leading up to the event, because if you have to execute an event and you're being mindful of like, oh well, I'm only budgeted for 10 hours this week. Well, what if it's going to take you 20 hours because one of your vendors or like your tech is broken,
Yeah.
right? So like those are things that like I personally don't like that structure, because I would probably charge the same amount if it was a flat rate plus or like a day rate, versus like, oh, now I have to keep tabs and I have to check in, right? And then you're
Yeah.
working with all this like honesty and like, okay, how much time is this really taking? It's just an extra thing to plan and do that just doesn't make sense for
Yeah.
people. So
Fair. And that's why step one is figure out what you want.
yeah, right.
So that
Do
ever
you
just
want to
easier for,
care?
yeah,
Yeah.
it's easier for everybody to know, kind of like be able to forecast, right?
Yeah, right. And even if it's a bigger cost, it's just like, hey, like it is what it is, versus like, oh, sorry, like I ran out of money. I'm done. Right. And then you're just like out in the in the desert, not knowing what to do.
Yeah. Got
So
it. So back to the steps. Number 4, ask for clips and case studies from the referees. So now
yeah.
you've narrowed it down, like who sounds good. Reach out to those referees, and before you spend much time with like just pester them with questions.
Yeah.
Do the basics that you can do first to save everybody the time.
Mhm.
So like getting video clips is one thing because you can kind of see their technical expertise.
Mhm.
And then getting case studies can help as well, right?
Yes. Yeah.
What would you want to look for? Like if you were hiring a producer and you wanted to like look at their clips to see if they were a good fit, what would you be looking for? Like what kinds of like technical expertise?
It I yes, this is a tough question to answer, because every output of an event is different based on what happened in the beginning, right? Like, did the
Yeah.
tech break down and not work well? Was the engagement really low because they didn't do a lot of like integrating the engagement into the event? So like I take that with a grain of salt, because I'm not going to say, well, this event with this type of strategy and this promotion and this type of speakers is going to equal the same for me, right? So like if I'm looking for a producer or someone to work with me or alongside me, I want to know in the industry who have they worked with, and like what is it, going back to like those questions of what the referrer said, like what was their experience like. So how am I going to work with you as my client, right? And how do you work best, and what am I going to be responsible for and what are you going to be responsible for? So like those things, I think come with like industry expertise and like what examples you can show. Cause like there's a lot of like, if someone asks me for examples, there's not a lot of things I can show because most of the time I'm sitting behind the computer doing what I need to do. Right. Unless I have a camera crew filming me, like
Yeah.
my whole process is right. Like it's a different, what the output is not necessarily reflective of like the skill set, in my opinion, all the time. Depends, right?
Yeah.
So I think you have to learn again back to number one, what do you want, right? Like, is it a successful event one time and it's done? You just have someone showing up, or is it like this is a long-term thing that we're going to do quarterly or every year, and we want to make sure that it's successful? And what is success? What's defining success, right? Like, did it go off without a hitch, but we didn't have too many engagement people in the chat? Okay, great. But what's priority right here? So lots of different things.
Fair. Yeah. So that was step 4. Like ask for details from the referees. Step 5, meet those top 3. Really wouldn't recommend meeting more than 3. How are you going to decide? How do you have the time? Right? And just best thing for meeting the top 3, like, as you should do with any like kind of purchase situation, don't just go into it blind and get sold. Like have a list of like kind of determine your criteria beforehand.
Right.
So have like a list of questions, right? So that you can be in the alpha position a little bit, kind of structuring the conversation.
Yeah.
Makes sense?
Yeah. And a good producer will also pull those questions out of you as well.
Sure.
Like asking the right, and not just, I mean, are they a guide or a grunt, right? Like you define your position in that sense. Like I've had calls where like I'm leading the call and then it's like they get inspired because I'm a great producer in that sense. But if I'm just like, tell me what you want, that's a completely different conversation, right? So
fair. Finally get quotes, but really recommend my just number one recommendation for all of this is to end up going with your gut. Like I think that it's, especially if you're going to do more than one of these, and just knowing that every event they get tough, like when it comes down to the line, I think like the personal relationship is like the right person is better than the right best price.
Yeah, go with your gut. I think that's definitely the key here, because you'll notice the yellow flags in your initial communications. Do they show up to the meetings on time? Do they send you a recap? Is there proper communication? These are all good. These are business acumen good, right? Like how do they work versus like what's the output? And I've seen both. Like when I was doing the producers program with StreamYard, like there was some communications that I had with potential producers and they just weren't very well versed. I wanted to like take them under my wing and like teach them like this can be your business, but just do these things, right? So I don't know. That's a thing that I care about when I'm doing business with people. So my hope is that other people care about that I work with, right? It's not just like this messy thing that we talk about.
Well, it's tough for events to not be on time, right? A lot of people are going to be showing up at a certain time, and if every individual hasn't delivered on, been in integrity with what they said they were going to do, then everything kind of falls apart one little fraction of a minute at a time, right?
Yes, right. So if everyone shows up on what to do, like, and it's all good, and you got your rock star producer, aka me, what would they not do?
Right. So yeah, that was the 5 steps. Finally, this the end is like what not to do. One things I really recommend not doing is doing a full DIY, especially if you're brand new at it, if you haven't practiced. We do have a DIY episode back in the very beginning about how you can practice, but it's like for the big show, for like your big event, Don't just be like, we're just gonna. My nephew is great with Zoom, and I think he can run it for us. Like maybe he can, but maybe something might go wrong. Maybe your nephew goes to a football game that day.
But maybe that's what they want. That's the thing. Like maybe they just want something DIY and like messy and
yeah, and it's
not structured.
and it's okay, but it's just depending on what type of output you're thinking you want to have, right?
Right.
Um,
That's
yeah,
episode 1.
yeah,
What's the purpose?
yeah,
Yeah, for sure. I think and I mean, I'll speak for myself. At the end of the day, I want to make sure that what you output is like a good representation of your business or your brand or whatever you're doing. So have a conversation with me, even if you don't feel that you can hire me or like that you feel like you might be wasting my time. Like if you put on a good virtual event and I helped you with one small thing that you're going to end up doing yourself, it's good for me and other producers, for the industry itself. Because if you have a bad output and I couldn't help you, or you were too afraid to ask a question, then like the people attending are going to be like, I hated that virtual event. I'm never going to go to a virtual event. Let's stop doing it. And then they die. Like
yeah,
they're not going to die because there are people doing them really well, but like you don't want that to be a reflection. Like you don't, because you were too scared or you didn't feel like you had the right questions to ask or you didn't want to ask anyone, like you're going to end up, it'll cost you in the long run because you're just not going to do something like that ever again. And then you're going to be a dinosaur. Bring it back.
You're gonna be a dinosaur. I like that, tying it back to the industry. Love
Yeah.
it. Giving back to keep it alive.
Mhm.
On with like related to that, do you mind if I give like wanting to move into doing more interviews and just
Yeah.
valuable content for our audience? Would you be okay if I put out an ask to the audience? Like
Yes.
if you have some extremely successful online events, I like to say online events, not virtual. I
Yeah.
think virtual is like you've got a fucking headset on and
Virtual reality.
yeah, virtual reality online events. If you have some successful online events, you've had them going for a while, or it's like new success and you're excited about it, you're like putting more energy into it. Love to have you on the show and just learn about like what industry you're in, like what format is working for
Mhm.
you, what some of the tips and tricks are. Be super
Mhm.
interested to hear from one of our audience members about that.
Yes. Yeah, that would be. I mean, that's really, it helps. I think that's what all the event tech people want to learn about, from producers to people having event sites like you want to know like what's successful and how can what they've created or what they do help the industry as a whole
Yeah,
in the long term. So
yeah, that would be awesome.
so the question is, what events have you been putting on that are
Yeah,
successful and what are those elements of success?
yeah. And
Okay.
would you like to come on the show and rant
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
rave
Yeah.
about it?
That's a bonus. Yeah.
Love to have it. Finally, so I think we've got our 5 steps.
Yes.
If you missed the 5 steps, if you're tuning in late, if you need a summary, go to rizpod.live,
Yes.
download that checklist and more. Show
And
notes,
yeah, show
bios,
notes.
all the good
What, you
things.
keep cutting me off. I can't. What you say?
I just wait until I see
What
you start to talk and I just go.
All right, let's
Nope.
recap. Figure out what you want. Find references, not producers. Interview the refers. Ask for clips and case studies. And then meet your top 3.
And finally, go with your gut. Don't put price first because it'll cost you.
Well done. Like John said, go to rizpod.live for all show notes and make sure you hit subscribe if you are watching this on YouTube or listening on your favorite podcast platform.
Awesome.
Bye.
Till next time, guys. Bye.